Welcome in to the PFF NFL betting show, boys. We have a good one on tap. It's conference championship weekend. Patriots, Broncos, Seahawks, Rams for the third time. It could not be a better week of football. Four great teams pitted against each other. Mason Cameron, Ben Linsey, joining us remotely, Judah Fortgang. Judah, how are you feeling this week, man? We got a good week of games going on here.
That's right. I mean, Championship Sunday, if not the best day of singular day of football, I think has to be the second best. I do have a soft spot for week one. Capping off a season, we all expected Sam Darnold and Jarrett Stidham to be hosting the respective conference championship games. In the AFC, you go from Patrick Mahomes doing it every year. It's a natural way, I think, for how the season's gone. But some super intriguing games, and I think it's a really unique spot, and I'm sure we'll talk plenty about it. Having Jarrett Stidham start the AFC Championship game against the Patriots team that has had quite the ride to get there as well. So
definitely
excited to buckle in.
Definitely ready to buckle in. We're going to talk a lot about Jarrett Stidham today. I know we have some angles based into that world. Ben, how are you doing today? You ready to make some money?
I am. Yeah, Zach Tantillo, who works on our social team, is an Auburn alum, and he sent multiple Jarrett Stidham hype videos over, and it got me fired up for Sunday. So Woo! I'm ready to go.
That's how we go. Jarrett Stidham, highest graded quarterback of the preseason, by the way. Don't you guys forget it. And if you guys don't want to forget it, make sure you head over to PFF and get yourself a subscription to PFF Plus right now. That gets you access to all of our betting tools, the player prop tool, the data trusted by all 32 NFL teams, and of course, our mock draft simulator, and brand new right now, our new first touchdown finder tool. Ben, tell us a little bit about the new first touchdown finder that we just released on PFF.com. You helped engineer it. You helped get it all off of the ground. Tell us a little bit about what we got going on here.
Yeah, this was kind of a thought we had in the offseason that some of these niche prop markets, we have a lot of data that would help inform them that you can't really find in a lot of other places. And this is kind of the first one we're rolling out. It's on PFF.com right now. And really the idea is we have some EPA per play numbers in the first 15 plays specifically, kind of to identify which teams are performing well early in games, because a big part of betting first touchdown is trying to identify which team is going to score first. So you can see the EPA per play for that player, for their opponent, the difference between the two. You can see opportunity early in games in the first 15 plays, touches, touch rate, target rate. You can see red zone usage, and then how often defenses are allowing touchdowns in the red zone when these offenses get down there. So it kind of provides a level of unique data that we thought was relevant to this first touchdown market, and it'll help you make your bets. And these blue stars, if you can see on the preview we're giving here on the first touchdown odds, those are from a data science model that Kevin Hogan worked on. It's a Monte Carlo Markov chain mixed with a logistic model, and it's basically just showing where we think there is value based on all of this data on who's going to score first.
Yeah, and of course, a big shout out to Kevin on that. He really worked hard on this, and big shout out to everybody who put in some work on this. And Ben, we talked a little bit about this tool earlier this week when we picked out some first touchdowns on these games. Why don't you run us back through a little bit on something that you're targeting in that first touchdown market?
Yeah, the two that I called out were Stephon Diggs, which is basically the Patriots have been good early in games, the Broncos have not. All right, so I like targeting someone in New England, and Diggs has been active early in games when you look at some of the target rates, red zone usage, and this is also a Broncos matchup. We'll talk about it in a little bit. They play a lot of man coverage. Diggs has been very good against man coverage this year, and he's also worked in the slot a lot. Right, so I think he'll kind of avoid that Surtain matchup on the outside for a lot of the game when he's inside. And then the long shot, we hit 100-1 last week on Marvin Mims. And I'm looking to run it back with Konate Montfield, first touchdown at 100-1. I had some Xavier Smith last week, and really with Jordan Whittington coming back, he was not as involved in the offense. The Rams did run a lot more 11 personnel last week. We've talked all seasons about how they've been this big multi-tight end, 13 personnel team. They only ran 7 snaps with 13 personnel, so they were in 3 wide receiver for a lot of the game. And Mumpfield's a guy who they've gotten on the field once they get down in the red zone. He ran a route on 6 of 8 red zone dropbacks last week for the Rams. He already scored a first touchdown this season in the Jaguars game, the international game. Right, so he's been involved in the red zone, and they were running more 3 wide receiver. That's kind of a trend with them being a little bit healthier at wide receiver. I think the price at 100-1 is pretty tempting there.
Book it. Let's make some money, boys. Cut out a Mumpfield. There we go. Judah, when you look at first touchdowns, what do you kind of look at? You look at some of the same stuff, anything else? Anything sticking out to you in these matchups as a first touchdown?
Not a market that I typically dabble too much in. The limits are low, and there's obviously a lot of variance, but it's also fun. And let's not forget that some of this is entertaining. I like Ben's shout here. Nothing too much to add, and then I think it. If you want to break it down from a somewhat analytical level and try and tease out, like, there is probably some effect of certain teams scoring earlier, right? Like scripted plays is a real phenomenon. Like, I don't think you're going to do better than a lot of the kind of specialized data that we capture at PFF to, get some edge in a market that is certainly among the more random ones, but also allows you to take some 100-1 shots.
Of course. Love that. And we're gonna cash on some Mumpfield this week. So definitely. And of course, if you guys want access to the new First Touchdown Finder tool or the PFF Player Prop tool, make sure you go get a PFF Plus subscription. And you know what? Check out the PFF Player Prop tool right now.
Everyone's got takes. Numbers have truth. And the truth is, most people are betting with emotion. Sportsbooks feed on it. TikTok gurus sell it. The hype machine runs on it. That's how you lose. PFF is different. You're betting with winning data. The same data trusted by all 32 NFL teams and the sharpest minds in the game. PFF betting tools take every prop, every matchup, every angle, and run them through our custom models. Built on the best football data in the world. What comes back is your edge. Simple, sharp, and built to win. Want to go deeper? PFF puts a pro-level analytics department in your hands, giving you the same insights teams use to find every advantage. Build your game plan with matchup analysis. Project every snap, every matchup, and every edge before kickoff. Because the smartest plays start long before Sunday. Hit rates show how a player performs against their prop and against defenses built the same way. It's the data that gives you real confidence in every pick. Next, Key Insights translates PFF data into the story behind every matchup, giving you the why that powers your bets. From coverage schemes to defensive looks, it's the context that turns raw numbers into winning decisions. When you're ready to take action, filter through every prop on the market and focus on the opportunities that matter. By game, matchup, or value. Then, shop for the best available line in your area and tap your book of choice to place the bet instantly. Everyone's got takes, but now you've got truth. Bet with data, win with PFF.
And of course, like I said, you guys can go get access to both of those tools with your subscription to PFF Plus right now. All right, boys, let's jump into it. Time to make some money. First game on the slate here, AFC Championship game. We have the New England Patriots heading into Denver to take on the Jarrett Stidham-led Broncos. New England minus about 4.5 in this game, 42.5 on the game total here. Ben, break down a little bit about what you're seeing in this game.
Yeah, I think obviously the biggest news is the Jared Stidham start with the Bo Nix injury last week, which very weird situation. They won, and then instantly it was like Bo Nix is out for the season, and it was like everyone was like, how? when did he get hurt? But this was the Broncos as a 1.5-point favorite on the look-ahead line, and it moved out to around 5.5. Now it's back down to 4.5. I think that's a pretty aggressive line movement, given that, right, Bo Nix isn't like a Josh Allen, right? The case for the Broncos making the Super Bowl this year was not Bo Nix is going to carry them to the Super Bowl with this elite passing offense. Right? That wasn't the case for the Broncos. It was that they have home field advantage, that their defense is very good, that they will have an advantage in the trenches against most teams. I think that's still true, right? And Jarrett Stidham is it's easy to kind of discount him just because he hasn't played with Denver the last 2 years. He hasn't really played at all. But he's one of the highest paid backup quarterbacks in the league. They obviously believe in him. Sean Payton believes in him. And from a clean pocket specifically, has done a pretty good job the last two. It's not a big sample, but like 2022 with the Raiders, 2023 when he had 100-plus snaps. Across those 2 seasons from a clean pocket, he has 8.3 yards per attempt, which, again, small sample, but that would be a top 10 mark in the NFL. And this is the Broncos offensive line that is first in pass protection grade as a unit this season. And that's very different from the last 2 offensive lines that we've seen New England play. The Chargers 31st, the Texans 21st in that same unit grade. And the Texans were down Trent Brown. They were down a starter last week. And both C.J. Stroud and Justin Herbert did not react well to pressure in those games. And there's certainly a case to be made that Jarrett Stidham won't either if he gets pressured. But I think he's going to be pressured less than those 2 quarterbacks were. And then on the other side, the Broncos defensive line, right, we saw the Texans defensive line be able to impact Drake May, and we saw him fumble the ball a few times, and he has taken sacks. They haven't been like super negative sacks. There's a lot of data on like he takes not that many yards lost on his sacks because he's scrambling and getting closer to the line of scrimmage. But I do think there's a chance that this Broncos defensive line can be able to impact May a little bit the same way that we saw with Houston last week. So all of that's to say, I think the move from Broncos being slight favorites to being 4.5-point underdogs now, I kind of like Denver factoring all of that in.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree there. That's a pretty massive swing for, as I mentioned at the top of the show there, Jarrett Stidham, while he hasn't really thrown a pass in the regular season in quite a while, he was the highest graded quarterback in the preseason. Now, it is the preseason, that's something to be said. But of course, you do have to go out and throw those footballs. And when you come out with an 11.6% big-time throw rate, that's one of the highest that we see through any amount of a sample. That's pretty incredible. That actually gives them some confidence. So when Sean Payton comes out and he says, I'm confident and we're comfortable with our quarterback position, and they go out there and they say all these nice things about Jarrett Stidham, he's not saying that so that they just keep the faith. He's saying that because they actually believe it. And Judah, I see on our sheet here that you're leaning towards the Broncos here too. Ben and I both took the Broncos early on when we submitted our picks for these games here. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in this game as well, Judah.
Yeah, I mean, Ben laid out purely the logic for why I think you'd bet on the spread in particular, which is just like, I think a kind of overreaction to Bo Nix. I think Ben said it perfectly of like this Broncos team, I think very little of its value actually kind of emanates from Nix. Like what Nix does extremely well is avoid sacks and effectively allow the system of Sean Payton to work. But that is also, in some respect, I wouldn't be surprised if Stidham's actually better in system. In his ability, especially downfield, where again, obviously, like we're talking about tiny samples, like he has had a lot of success. He like has a in system rate in particular of like 70%, which is one of the higher marks in the NFL. Obviously, we're dealing with small samples and it's aggregated over a different period of time, but he's been really good in doing so. And I think being in Payton's system, the kind of output of that rather than the process, right? Measuring the process, PFF grade is very good. And I assume the EPA almost takes a leap there, or at least there's some probability of that being true. And to Ben's point, like I've certainly been high on the Patriots pass rush, but you can also see how matchup played a role in that. And I would even point out that like there's probably some bleeding from like how we grade offensive line with Bo Nix's ability to avoid sacks. Like it's really, really difficult to parse out these things. And that is certainly Nix's, effectively his one best skill is the ability to avoid sacks. So I like Denver 3.5 for, and I'm going to take a little bit of where I think this line probably should be and get that at above 50%. you can trade it at plus 103 on DraftKings. I'm sure you can shop around, find some good prices. The other thing on this game is we learned some new information on Drake May too, at least relative to last week. Drake May, like we talked about on both sides, how the Patriots have basically played a bunch of backups, the backup quarterbacks on the defensive side of the ball. And also, like, it has obviously been a talking point ad nauseum about Drake May having faced an extremely easy schedule, but he did struggle against this pass rush. And to Ben's point about the sacks, like, he still took 5 sacks, and many of those were, I mean, the fumbles were obviously terrible, and that's like exactly the same sort of scenario and the same type of defense in Denver that we just saw him struggle with, which isn't to say that, we're just going to see a repeat of last week. Of course not. Like, football is much more, there's a lot more variance, and you don't want to index on one game in particular, but it is some data to suggest, like, it's not as though Drake May is just going to steamroll every opponent. And, like, we have to put some probability of that happening, which was always true, but we're getting kind of more evidence to that. And, like, it's a high variance game. Like, the Broncos are going to play a lot of man coverage, and that, like, May has done a terrific job with his receivers. The Patriots have done a great job, but, like, these are some really difficult matchups. If you were to have Surtain lining up, I mean, I'm sure he'll be across the formation, but, like, I assume he's going to follow Diggs most of the time. He'll probably get some booty too. You're really relying on, well, let's see if Mac Hollins comes back. Like, Riley Moss on whatever receiver, like, that's not a guarantee slam dunk win matchup for the Patriots. And I think Denver can really express their defensive strength there. But at the same time, Drake May is also a terrific scrambler. He buys a lot of time, especially in man coverage. If you're able to kind of extend a play from 3 seconds, that should be a 3-second play to 3.5 seconds. That extra half second might be the difference of a 50-yard bomb to a guy like Demario Douglas, who unfortunately we don't have any prop set for right now. But all of that is to say, like, I think when you look at what's most likely to happen here, I think that May is, like, going to struggle a lot more than he has in the season. That's, the market's capturing a lot of that, I think. But also, like, it's going to be a high variance game, and that works to both sides. Which is, like, the Broncos are playing a lot of man, which allows for a lot more of these explosive plays. And that same 3 second to 3.5 second could be the difference between a sack, fumble, and a touchdown. And I think that ultimately is what will determine this game. Is, like, are the Patriots able to hit on the explosives, even if they're not able to kind of move the ball so well down to down, or are the Broncos going to kind of turn the game on its head with a sack, fumble, which they are in a high propensity situation for.
Yeah, and I love the shout out to what you said about Drake May with the pressure. When he saw this Houston defense, he actually did produce his lowest graded game of the season at 49.1, and it wasn't really pretty at all times. And he's sort of skated under the national narrative radar because of that game that CJ Stroud had. So this is really one of those situations where, while he has slightly been propped up by that slighter schedule, he is still quite a bit of an athlete. But this is a matchup that does not project terribly well for him. While he is a good passer, this is something that we talk about a little bit during the season, Ben, when we took some Justin Herbert lines against some blitz-heavy teams, is that when he is blitzed and he isn't pressured, he's excellent, and it props up that overall blitz grade. But when the blitz does get home, it's very, very drastically low, with a passing grade below 50. And then when we talk about against man coverage, he's a lot better at beating zone than he is at beating man. Now, he's still an excellent passer regardless of the coverage that he's going to see, but that's going to be a situation where we see a matchup that is going to be a difficult one for May. And given also the Broncos' second highest in pressure rate, that actually has led me to one of my favorite props of the week, which is actually going to be May to go over 30.5 rushing yards. And it's one of the things we talked about last week. It's something we continue to talk about in these high leverage games, is that when these quarterbacks have their back against the wall in tight situations, high leverage situations, a lot of them, the ones that are at least capable of doing it, are more likely to break the pocket and scramble. Of the 10 games this postseason, we've seen 7 quarterbacks go over this 30-plus mark. May doubled this mark in the wild card round. He had 66. That ties for the most by any quarterback this postseason. Ben, I'm sure you probably know, since we watched that game together last week, the only other quarterback to do that was Josh Allen against this Broncos defense. And it's really a microcosm of what we see in situations where teams play man-heavy coverage against mobile quarterbacks. Broncos, they're 25th in rushing yardage allowed to quarterbacks. They've allowed 65-plus in each of their last 2 games. And it's just a function of that defensive philosophy. 6th in pass blitz rate, 2nd in pressure rate, 7th in man coverage rate. That forces those guys, those mobile passers, that when they feel pressure and they break the pocket, they're more likely to scoot on along the line of scrimmage and go. May, as himself, I mean, he's very comfortable breaking the pocket. He's 3rd in scramble yardage. He's 1st in runs on scrambles all during the regular season. I see this being another game where in gotta-have-it moments and gotta-have-it situations, just like Josh Allen did last week where he had 8 first downs running, that's going to be a situation where we see May sort of break the pocket, get free, and, scramble for a little bit of yardage. So I think that's also going to be a situation where that could also help keep this Broncos defense honest, because that's where they like to go in those situations, in those high-pressure, gotta-have-it situations. They like to go to their bread and butter of man coverage, force you to beat us with your receivers. But when you have a guy that can break that pocket, that opens up that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, and I think to that point, like, both teams are going to be pass heavy, right? And May, he's not really getting used in the design run game, so a lot of this is going to be on scrambles. And if you're getting higher pass volume from New England, that certainly helps the over. Like, these are 2 below average rushing offenses. Like, we might get J.K. Dobbins back for the Broncos. That's kind of still up in the air. He's been a limited practice participant, but I don't think that fundamentally changes their run game. Like, these have been below average rushing offenses for most of the season, and these have been 2 above average run defenses. For New England, we talked about it a little bit last week, and we saw, like, the Texans got nothing on the ground. When they've been healthier in their front 7 with Milton Williams, with Robert Spillane, with some of these other pieces, they've been one of the better run defenses in the league, and the same can be said for the Broncos. All right, so I think both of these teams are going to tilt pretty heavily towards the pass.
And to that point, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about Stephon Diggs that you like his potential against man coverage, which makes sense. He's one of the best separators in the NFL against man coverage. He's been excellent. Do you have any angles sort of towards him in this game?
Yeah, one of the props I like is combining Sutton and Diggs combined receiving yards, 125 plus at plus 195. And it's really just, I like both of these receivers in these matchups. Like, both these defenses are going to play pretty heavy man. They're both top 10 in man coverage rate. And both wide receivers this year have been top 12 in the NFL in yards per out run against man coverage. And Diggs, like, yes, theoretically Sutton will follow him, but I'm not sure that'll be true in the slot. And Diggs is top 10 in the NFL this year in receiving yards from the slot. Like, with Mac Hollins potentially coming back, like, I think their ideal 3 receiver set is the Hollins and Booty on the outside and Diggs in the slot, mixing with Demario Douglas. So given how well Diggs has played against man, given that I think pass volume is going to be high, I like that. And then Sutton, the same thing, right? Has been good against man. He'll probably get Christian Gonzalez, but given that I'm higher on the Broncos passing offense than Market is, and the matchup is good, like, I like sort of looking at both of those together. And get the chance that one goes off, one slightly goes under, and we're still kind of hitting this number.
And you got some injuries in the receiving core for the Broncos. We're still waiting on some Troy Franklin, seeing if he's going to be able to play. So that does sort of narrow that target distribution. You could see Courtland Sutton getting a pretty big day in that one. And, to your point also with Diggs, you mentioned earlier that we're taking Diggs as a first touchdown option at 10-1. And that actually got me thinking when I was looking at some of the market that I liked on this game. And one of the places that I'm actually going to go is New England plus 110 to cover the first quarter by half of a point here. And the idea, obviously, is just the fact that they have been one of the better teams starting out in the NFL. And they're 8th in EPA per play in the first 15 plays. The Broncos, one of the slower starting teams in the NFL, 25th in EPA per play in the first 15 plays. And that's actually created a massive EPA difference between these two teams. It's one of the highest of the weekend. That was one of the key metrics that we highlighted in that first touchdown tool. And if we bring up this chart that shows our first score probabilities, another big shout out to Kevin for setting up this chart right here for us, we see that New England has higher probabilities in both touchdown and field goal. These are weighted towards early game drives, while the Broncos are a little bit higher than 50% on punt possibilities here, on probability here. So I like the potential of New England to get out to an early lead here at plus 110 and really just take control of this game early on. And as the Broncos have been in this game, or throughout the season, as a late riser, one of the better late EPA teams in the league. I believe they're 6th in EPA per play in the fourth quarter or overtime. New England, a little bit lower than that. They're 16th, right around about league average in that metric. I could see this being a situation where New England takes an early lead. The Broncos have to get their feet under them with a new quarterback, figure it out late, and potentially win this game on the money line late. So one of the ideas that I'm taking here at 9-1 is actually New England first quarter, and then we're going to go over to the Broncos money line there as well. So we have a lot of possibilities in this game. And, Judah, I want to go over to you here real quick. We're going to talk a little bit about the Broncos side of this. We talked more about Jarrett Stidham. I know we have some marks here on Jarrett Stidham. You and I both have a same game parlay with a little Stiddy on it. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and why you're encouraged by what you're seeing with Stidham in the market for him in this game.
Please never say that again.
What do you mean, Stiddy?
I'm not even going to repeat it. What do you mean?
Sean Payton told me I could, man.
Here's that should be all you need to know. Here's what I'll say, and also I'm going to go a little off script here because Mason, as you were talking through some of your prop angles, I was building some. I was in the lab building some SGPs as well. It was sparking some thoughts. Okay, we'll start with Stidham passing, and I think the effective yard per attempt mark is way off. The market is implying right now that he's at 33 pass attempts for 200 yards. And I think that Stidham's going to be far more efficient. That is implying not too many passing yards. And I wanted to talk about the Patriots' run defense, which we have not done yet. And this is a unit that the first half of the season was dominant, and they top 3 in basically every run defense metric. Robert Spillane and Milton Williams go down. They're bottom 3 in every run defense metric, and then the past couple of weeks have been a dominant team. You add that with the fact that the Broncos are one of the pass heaviest teams in the NFL, and volume I think is going to be on their side. On the passing side, if anything, I think it's probably more than 33 attempts. But 33 attempts at 199 yards basically implies a 6 yard per attempt marker. I think there's a lot of probability of the Broncos throwing 40 times. That I think happens, especially in a game in which the Patriots are leading. But even in a Broncos win, I think there's a path for Stidham to throw a bunch because the Patriots are such a pass funnel. And because the Broncos are simply very pass heavy, and I don't think that Sean Payton sees this, and there's obviously some projection here as a spot where we don't have a functional NFL quarterback. We need to rely on our ground game. So I think there's gonna be a ton of volume. And then on the efficiency side, this has been a Patriots defense. I mean, their quarterbacks are magically healing from concussions at record times because concussions in the NFL don't exist after week 18. So I'm not sure the actual full-on health of the Patriots secondary, and this is not a unit that's been great, especially against some of the more formidable offensive opponents. We don't really know what the Broncos are going to be, but we already gave kind of the bullish case for Stidham and the efficiency, which is that like he's been in our small sample very good in system. This is a very good Broncos offensive line, even if it's still somewhat affected by Knicks. I see this as a spot where like Stidham is going to be throwing often. I think at some efficiency, 200 yards against a like non-elite defense for a quarterback attached to a Sean Payton offense. I think it's just far too low. So prop bet on its own, I think it works in a lot of different game scripts. SGP 1. I think that if you look at how the Broncos win this game, the most likely, I think there are two kind of likely or two paths I see, which is that like the defense completely shuts May down. They force a bunch of turnovers and win that way. That is like, I think, one path. I don't think it's them riding the ground game. I think that's effectively out of question with how good the Patriots' run defense has been and the Broncos' propensity to throw the football. I think the more likely game script and where I think there's some value here is if Jarrett Stidham is effectively passing for, let's say, more than 6 yards per attempt, i.e. is more effective than the market expects. That, I think, is the path towards the Broncos exceeding expectation, right? There's almost some like level of the Broncos defense is very likely to slow May down. The question is, can the Broncos score enough to overcome that? And I think that happens through Stidham. So I think that correlation is mispriced. And you can take some of the alts there, especially if Stidham's really exceeding expectations. Get a little Stidham 280 Broncos money line. You can get that at 16-1. Where I think things get more interesting is you really lean into this game script. And we say, okay, what happens if like not just Stidham exceeding expectations, but like, oh, actually he's like a solid quarterback in this system in a like not so terrible matchup, and the Broncos can win with margin here. And like this is a team that does the same thing they've done all season with Bo Nix, which is be a like 5% pass over expected team, rely on their passing game, have success, stick with it even with a lead, especially against this run defense. And we get something like Stidham 280, over 32.5 attempts. The Broncos to win by 3.5, as for what it's worth in this game script, they continue to generate a lot of quick pressure, force some 3-and-outs. Like there's a large probability there of plenty of incompletions. May has not thrown very many incompletions. I think a lot of that is a function of the defenses. Number one, good defense. Number two, a man coverage defense where the base rate of success is completions is far lower in man coverage than zone coverage. And you can end up with a spot where the Patriots opponents are running a lot more plays than is typical, both because of the defensive efficiency and because of the defensive style. And then like we're getting plenty of attempts in that scenario because we're again indexing on the fact that the Broncos are going to throw a lot. So we've got Stidham over 32.5 attempts, Stidham 280 passing yards, Broncos to win with some margin minus 3.5, and then Mason, Drake May rush 40 yards. We get that at 160-1, and I think the scenario in which May is running is actually exactly the game script in which we just described, which is a team that is struggling to generate a lot of completions, needs to rely on the ground, rely on his legs to get going, and it's exactly the stylistic piece, which is it's a lot easier and a quarterback's scrambling efficiency is far greater in man coverage than it is against zone coverage. And Drake May is not getting most of his rushing production on design runs. So I think, if anything, that correlates with a game script in which the Broncos are trailing. That is, of course, not how the market is currently pricing this. 160-1, we're really betting on a like particular game script of, hey, Jarrett Stidham has a lot of success, more success than we anticipate. And a lot of those things fall downstream of that. And we can kind of take advantage of a lot of mispriced correlations here. Not that much, I don't think, that needs to go right here. 160-1. Jarrett Stidham 280. Jarrett Stidham over 32.5 attempts. Broncos minus 3.5. Drake May 40 rush yards.
Love it. I love it. I love the call out to that. And that was a very similar sort of approach that I was going to take to my same game parlay. So I won't really, beat a dead horse with the whole breakdown that Judah just put so perfectly. But I will add another possible mix and match option if you want to, have more tools in your tool belt as options for this game. We talked a little bit about Courtland Sutton earlier, Ben. One of the other angles that I sort of like in this game is actually going to be Pat Bryant, who has been much, much better and much more involved over the end of the season here. It looks like he is going to be coming back from this concussion because, as we said, I guess concussions don't exist after week 18. I believe
that speaking of concussions, Marvin Mims, it looked like, was out for the game with a concussion on the opening kickoff, and I was like, oh no. And then he came back and came through for us.
Came through for us, right? And big shout out to Ben. If you guys aren't following either of these guys on Twitter or following all their work, make sure you guys go do. Judah at Throw the Damn Ball. Ben at Ben Linsey _ at PFF Mace for myself as well. Make sure you guys are hitting us up on there. We've got a ton of stuff coming out all the time, so make sure you guys check that out. But like I was saying, one of the other angles I do like is going to be Pat Bryant here. Since week 13, he's got a 22% target rate. That's the highest on Denver. And I mean, we saw it in the divisional round. 3 of Denver's first 4 plays were to Bryant, designs to Bryant on first reads. So 3 for 36 yards. Then I thought it was a knee at first. I thought he was grabbing on his knee, but apparently it was a concussion. He's going to be back, I believe. That's what we were trending towards. I believe he had a full practice there on Thursday. He's going to have the added benefit, too, of having some comfortability with Stidham. He was Stidham's most targeted receiver in the preseason. They went 6 for 91 yards across those games. Stidham, two of his 5 big-time throws were to Pat Bryant. So I think there's some of that flexibility here. If there's no Troy Franklin, who's dealing with a hamstring injury, if he's not able to go, I expect Bryant to play a much bigger role in this game. So I think that that's another potential spot. And then, Ben, if we flow into this sort of, we have a lot of exposure right now here on the Broncos, and we're going to add a little bit more to the plate. If we can get into a situation as Judah had painted there, you actually also have a line on the Broncos game total here. Tell us a little bit about what you're targeting for that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time because I feel like we've already talked this game to death, but Broncos over 19.5 team points at plus 100 just for all of the stuff we've already talked about. Like, that's a pretty low team total. I even bumped it up. It's 18.5. I bumped it up to 19.5 just to get the plus 100. And I'm higher on their offense than it seems like sportsbooks are. So I like that as my game bet for this week.
Yeah, and I think definitely a big thing too, like you said, it's the clean pressure versus now this Pat's defensive pressure rate looks a lot better over the last 2 games because they played 2 much lower offensive lines. They're not going to get that this week. But it is also, of course, going to come down to the game plan and how these 2 teams game plan against each other. And our game plan of the week every week is presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. Just like every team win starts with a great game plan, your future should too. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect you and your family so you can focus on winning today, knowing tomorrow is covered. And whether you're just starting out or building your dynasty or looking to lock in long-term protection, their coverage options are designed to match your game plan. Visit westernsouthern.com/PFF to get your free life quote and start building your financial game plan today. Western and Southern, built to win, backed by over 130 years of helping people protect what matters most. And boys, as we said, we definitely talked that last game to death, but to be frank, a lot of our key bets of the week were from that game because we felt like that was a fairly mispriced game by books, and there's a lot of potential money-making opportunity in that one. Unfortunately, with this next game, it's going to be one of the better games you'll watch all season. It's going to be a much harder game to bet in a lot of aspects because we've seen these teams 3 times. This is going to be the 3rd matchup that we're seeing. The Rams head into Seattle in this one. Rams plus 2.5 on the road here. Game total on this game about 47.5 points. But we're going to be breaking this game down all the same. Ben, I know you have a nice SGP angle on this one. Judah, I know you're going to have something in the bag for me here. So we're going to be talking to you a little bit too as well as we go through this. I have a couple of prop angles that I like in this game as well. Ben, go ahead and break down what you're seeing in this matchup in particular.
Yeah, I'll just go with the SGP because I think it's a good framework to talk about the game. It's Darnold 34 plus attempts, Corum 10 plus rushing attempts, Rams to win the first half, Seahawks to win the game. And that is 75-1. And if you look at how these first two games have kind of played out, they've kind of followed this general format where the Rams have won the first half. The Rams have been winning for a lot of both of these games. And really they've come out and they've tried to run on Seattle early in games, which teams have not been able to run on Seattle at all. They have the best run defense in the NFL by EPA per play allowed by a decent margin. But they are a team that will sit and show too high. They have the second highest too high rate. And the Rams have come out and basically said, okay, we're going to try to get something going on the ground early in these games. They have a 58% run rate on early downs in the first half in the two games against Seattle this year. So that kind of plays into the quorum piece of this, tying in how the Rams have played against Seattle early in games, and the fact that we're saying that the Rams are winning the first half and they're playing with a lead. And then the Darnold piece of this, I think we look at this Seattle team as if you get them into negative game scripts, they could be in trouble. Right? And we've talked about this with a few teams. We talked about it with Philly a lot last year and this year. But Seattle, they have not been trailing much at all. Like they only have 150 snaps this year where they're trailing by 7 or more points. But in that sample, they've been the most efficient offense in the NFL by EPA per play. So it's small sample, somewhat noisy, but they haven't fallen apart when they've been down by a touchdown or more in games. In fact, they've been the best offense in the NFL in that sample. So, and we've seen it in the two games against the Rams. The first game, Darnold played terrible. He threw 4 interceptions. But they got to a point where they had a 60-yard field goal to win the game as time expired. They missed it. They lost by 2. And then, obviously, the classic in Week 16, in overtime, they came storming back. They got some help. They got a Rashid Shaheed punt return touchdown. They got some weird stuff there. But they came back. They forced overtime. They won. So I think this is a situation where we see Seattle pass more than we have all year. They've been one of the run-heavier teams in the league. But in the two games against the Rams, both competitive games, Darnold is averaging 39 pass attempts per game. And so that kind of connects to the 34-plus attempts here. And they're thin at running back here. There's no Zach Charbonnet. So it's Kenneth Walker. And then the backup running back options behind Walker for Seattle is Velus Jones, who that was kind of a surprise, right, when Velus Jones pops up in the divisional round and you're like, he's on Seattle. Cam Akers and George Halani is another potential option, right? So these are Cam Akers hasn't really played, has playoff experience, has big game experience, but these are options that Seattle probably not super comfortable giving a huge workload, and then behind Kenneth Walker. So I think we could see run-heavy Rams where Judah, Mason, we've talked about this year, quorum, it's more of a 50-50 split. We didn't really see that last week. But in general, towards the back half of the year, it's been kind of closer to a 50-50 split. So I like him to get 10 attempts. Darnold, 34-plus attempts, especially if Seattle's playing from behind. And in that scenario, I think Seattle can win the game. So I kind of like all of that at 75-1.
Yeah, I like that. And when you look at both of these two teams, it's been so interesting because we talk about that first game in Week 11. That was one of Mike McDonald's defense's best performances of the year. They literally held the Rams to their lowest EPA performance of the season in that game, but obviously lost because of the big turnover issue with Darnold in that game. We turn around to the other game, and they did not have the Rams number, but still find a way to win that game. So these are going to be big swings in this game. I like the story that you've laid out here for the potential that could go. That makes a lot of sense because we are seeing a big usage for Blake Corum. And then on the other side of this thing, you're getting Sam Darnold. He's going to have to pass more than usual. And I think that's particularly because also no Zach Charbonnet. I mean, the attempts line for Kenneth Walker right now is like 19 and a half. It's obscene. And yeah, I still think they're going to run the ball, but I feel like they have to come back down to earth in a tight game like this. They're going to be throwing quite a bit. So I like the potential there for that one as well.
Yeah, that's part of this too, is just kind of going against what the market, like Kenneth Walker's attempt line is up at 19 attempts. Matthew Stafford's passing line is way up. Darnold's is a little bit lower. Right here, we're kind of flipping it, right? And it's all over on Rams rushing attempts, all over on Seahawks pass attempts, with Seattle winning in the end. that's kind of what gets you to that 75-1 number.
I like that. Judah, what are you seeing with this matchup? Help me make sense of this game, Judah. Come on. I need to figure out what's going on here.
Look. You were right. I'll have some bet. But to answer your question about the matchup, there are just too many, I think, massive uncertainty spots, and not uncertainty in the Stidham uncertainty, where I think it kind of aligns itself in to one tail rather than the other. This is okay. We don't know about Sam Darnold's health. We don't. Frankly, we don't know about Matthew Stafford's health. He has not been the same quarterback the last couple of weeks. But you also don't want to kind of index on just 2 games. The kind of matchup that I'm most closely watching is the Seahawks run defense has been absolutely dominant all season, and it makes playing pass defense a lot easier when your run defense is so good and you're in constantly positive game states. This is a spot where the Rams have also been a terrific run offense all season. Can they win that matchup? I would lean no. And the Seahawks kind of maintain their ability, but it's not a binary either. And that I think is going to go a long way in determining this game. What's interesting to me about Sam Darnold in particular is that the 4 interception game kind of changed his play style, where he was so dominant the first half of the season up until that Rams game, throwing over the middle of the field. He was doing it very often, and he was the best in the NFL, especially in tight windows. And all of those rates have gone way down since that game. And the offense as a whole has been far less successful. So if you want to look at the full season data for Darnold, I think it kind of does not perfectly map to the quarterback he is right now and the decision-making that he is currently at. And in that way, I'm somewhat bearish on the Seahawks offense. Especially now, they've got no left tackle. This is a Rams pass rush that has been mostly absent, but this is precisely the weak link that can perhaps reinvigorate it. And I don't want Darnold creating. Maybe in negative game states, of which we obviously have a small sample of, he can win. I don't want, on the micro level, him creating when his left tackle does not do his job. Then again, it's also possible to scheme away from that early. And this is a Rams secondary that's kind of very quietly fallen apart. They're bottom 5 in perfect coverage rate over the back half of the season, and that has perpetuated itself week over week. So, there is certainly a path towards the Seahawks moving the ball. There's also exactly the kind of negative side, and I think the same can be said about the Rams, which is we just saw the Rams absolutely dominate the Seahawks defense, right? Stafford to Nakua was on fire. And that is always a bet on talent, and that can always happen. Then again, we've also seen the Seahawks defense dominate everyone, and we've seen a Rams offense that has struggled. And I think that is kind of true on the matchup level, no matter how you slice it. And Matthew Stafford's not exactly the quarterback that you want creating, right? This is not Patrick Mahomes. This is not a healthy Josh Allen where matchup matters a little bit less because they're so good at creating. Stafford is very much a function of his surroundings, and it works when you have incredible receivers and Sean McVay as your coach. It works a little bit less when you're going up against a dominant Seahawks defense. So I think this game plays out a lot of ways. If I had to choose some betting angle here, and I'm certainly not touching the spread here, I'm not touching the alts here, it is someone Ben just mentioned, that's Jordan Whittington. And Whittington came back, was kind of that third receiver, and notably that third receiver role had been kind of absent in the Rams offense all season, just because they were running so many 2 tight end sets. But that hasn't been the case in recent weeks, and I want to kind of layer up to that, especially if their game plan, and this is kind of the tail here, is we're not even going to try to win this game running the ball. Because that we don't want to waste so many early downs that we don't have. We're going to come out passing, and that to me maps a lot cleaner to a lot of 3 receiver sets, which Whittington was kind of the player there. 60 yards and a touchdown against he's a primary slot receiver, the middle of the field area. He's kind of also a hybrid receiver tight end, if we're being honest, which is exactly the kind of weak hole, if you will, of the Seahawks defense. They're really dominant against outside receivers. Again, Nakua and Adams can win that matchup, of course. But when we're looking at what's most likely to happen, I think it's a reliance a bit more on a guy like Whittington. 60 receiving yards and a touchdown. I'm saying 90-1 add 3 receptions to that, because I don't think this is happening on some explosives, you're getting that to 120 to 1. That is a very intriguing build to me. Whittington, 3 receptions, 60 yards and a touchdown. As a guy who's going to be on the field plenty, and probably, I mean, the matchup, he's not leading the team in targets by any stretch, but is a spot for some sneaky efficiency if the Rams are able to move the ball.
I like that tail right there. And, you mentioned the left tackle spot and Sam Darnold creating a little bit earlier with left tackle giving it up. That's actually going to be a big case in this one now, because it's looking like Charles Cross might not be able to play. Josh Jones also in danger of missing. That's going to leave Amari Kite to undrafted rookie to man the left tackle spot. That's a tough draw. I think that also opens up an angle here for Jared Verse at over a quarter sack. So to get a half sack at plus money, that's a great potential right there. So I like the opportunity with that. And I really love what you're saying there with this Rams team being able to sort of funnel targets into the middle of the field here. That is where we see some of this stuff with the Seahawks, and they funnel targets to tight ends. That also is where tight ends, tight end hybrid with Whittington. That's also where I like a potential with a Colby Parkinson, a potential touchdown at plus 330. I mean, you could push his receptions up to 4 or 5 and have a nice number there too. I think that's just an opportunity with this Seahawks team that just funnels targets to tight ends. Now, when we talk about Parkinson, he only had 2 in each of those previous games, but I think that the read is still there. The opportunity cost is still there for him to potentially go over a pretty low number right here at 2.5. I mean, the big thing is I think the market continues to think that Higbee is going to continue to get worked in and be the guy eventually, and that just hasn't been the case. It's still Parkinson. You can't talk about, touchdowns without Parkinson. He's been incredible there. So that's another angle that I like on this game, though. Any closing notes for this game, boys? We had a lot more angles on the first game, but I think that's because that one wasn't really – I think we didn't really like the pricing on a lot of the stuff there and saw some opportunity. This game, I think the market's pretty spot on in a lot of spots. Any closing notes, Judah?
I missed my opportunity for this last week, and since this is my heavy exposure, Broncos country, let's ride.
Let's ride. There we go. All right, I like that. Ben, any closing notes for the people at home?
No, excited to watch both of these games, even though I'll definitely have less on this Rams-Seahawks game like we talked about.
Yeah. It's going to definitely be one of a high-leverage game, high-octane game. This is going to be one of the games of the year, just like the last 2 were between the Seahawks and the Rams. And, of course, if you guys want to check out all the data that comes out of that game and the AFC Championship game, make sure you head over to PFF.com and get a PFF Plus subscription. That gives you access to both of our new betting tools, the player prop tool and the first touchdown finder, as well as the data trusted by all 32 NFL teams. And now that we're getting closer to the offseason, the mock draft simulator. So make sure you guys go in there and get your subscription to that. For Ben Linsey, for Judah Fortgang, for our producers behind the glass, Ty and Quinn, I am Mason, and I'll see you guys in a couple weeks for the Super Bowl.